From the mid-1970s to the early 1980s, the north of England was gripped by the fear of the Yorkshire Ripper. This was not just a series of ordinary murders, but a series of barbaric crimes that haunted women for many years, causing women in major cities such as Leeds, Bradford, or Manchester to not dare to step out at night. The perpetrator was later identified as Peter Sutcliffe, an ordinary truck driver in the eyes of his neighbors, but deep inside he was a maniac with a twisted mentality and bloodthirsty instincts. He attacked and brutally murdered at least 13 women and seriously injured many others. Sutcliffe's brutality shocked the British public. The press at the time described him as a Jack the Ripper of the 20th century, recalling the horrific memory of the notorious murderer in 19th century London. Headlines ran wild, and the police were criticized for their years-long investigation without finding the killer, while new bodies and victims continued to appear. The Yorkshire Ripper was not only a criminal case, but also became a symbol of social fear, reflecting both the incompetence of the investigative system and the safety gap for women during that period. The 1970s in West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester were a period of great social change in Britain. The global economic crisis caused unemployment to rise, especially in industrial cities such as Leeds, Bradford, and Manchester, once prosperous with their textile and mining industries, but now in recession. Thousands of workers lost their jobs, their livelihoods were insecure, and many working families fell into hardship. In this context, social moral degradation is even more evident. In poor neighborhoods, when the economy declines, prostitution and social evils spread, and police control is lax. Women, especially those who go out at night or work as prostitutes, become vulnerable targets, with little protection and often subject to social prejudice. It was in this moral and security vacuum that Peter Sutcliffe began to appear like a lurking ghost. As a truck driver with an ordinary appearance, he could move around without attracting attention. Sutcliffe took advantage of the chaotic social situation and the disdain for women of many people at that time to commit murders. The insecure social environment, combined with the flawed police approach, which viewed the victims as prostitutes rather than women in need of protection, allowed Sutcliffe to spread terror for years. Peter William Sutcliffe was born in 1946 in Bingley, Yorkshire, a typical industrial working-class area of northern England. His family was working class. His father was a manual laborer. His mother was a housewife. On the surface, this was an ordinary family, not too poor but not rich either, living in the context of a declining industrial society. From his early teens, Sutcliffe showed signs of psychological instability. He was unsociable, often isolated from his peers, and was particularly obsessed with prostitutes. From his early years, Sutcliffe had frequented the red light districts of Bradford and Leeds, both to observe and to satisfy his perverse curiosity. These experiences were imprinted on his mind, turning into a mixture of sexual desire, hatred, and misogyny. In his private life, Sutcliffe gave off the opposite impression. He was described as a quiet, ordinary, even shy man who did not make a special impression on his colleagues or neighbors. After leaving school, he worked odd jobs, then settled down as a lorry driver, a job that allowed him to travel around the cities of northern England without raising suspicion. It was this duality of personality, a gentle working man on one side and a violent, sexually obsessed maniac on the other, that kept Sutcliffe hidden for years. No one expected that this ordinary man would become one of Britain's most notorious serial killers. In 1969, Peter Sutcliffe first revealed his violent side. He attacked a woman in the red light district with a hammer. The attack left her badly injured, but she survived. The incident was not taken seriously at the time, and the police had no idea that this was the beginning of a series of crimes that would last for more than a decade. In the following years, Sutcliffe continued to carry out sporadic attacks, mostly on women walking alone at night. He often used a hammer or knife to knock out his victims, then fled, leaving them in critical condition. The incoherence of the initial investigation allowed Sutcliffe to continue his activities without being detected. The turning point came in 1975 when he committed his first confirmed murder. Wilma McCann, a 28-year-old single mother of 4, became the unfortunate victim. In the early hours of the morning, after a night out, Wilma returned to her home near Chapeltown, Leeds. Sutcliffe followed her, then struck her with a hammer, then stabbed her several times. Wilma died at the scene just a few hundred meters from her home. The death of Wilma McCann shocked the entire community. The image of 4 young children without their mother immediately shocked and received deep sympathy from the public. This was also the first case that opened the series of brutal murders by the Yorkshire Ripper, spreading terror throughout the north of England for many years to come. From 1975 to 1980, Peter Sutcliffe entered a period of escalating crime, where before he had only attacked sporadically. Now the murders came in succession, leaving a trail of horror across Leeds, Bradford, and the surrounding areas. Just a few months after the Wilma McCann case, the next victim appeared. In January 1976, Emily Jackson, 42, a married woman who had worked as a prostitute due to financial difficulties, was lured into Sutcliffe's truck. He hit her hard on the head with a hammer, then continued to stab her repeatedly in the stomach and chest with a knife. Emily's body was found in a disfigured state, haunting the entire community. In February 1977, he murdered Irene Richardson, 28, another prostitute. Irene was hit in the head with a hammer, then stabbed multiple times in the abdomen. Her death clearly confirmed Sutcliffe's pattern of using a hammer to incapacitate his victims, then following up with a knife. However, public attention really exploded in June 1977 when he murdered Jane MacDonald, a 16-year-old girl who had no connection to prostitution. Jane was attacked while walking home from a night out. Jane's death caused a huge wave of outrage as the public realized that the Yorkshire Ripper did not just target prostitutes, but that any woman could be a victim. The press called it a horrific turn in the murders. After Jane, fear gripped the area, but Sutcliffe continued to commit crimes. In 1978, he murdered 21-year-old Yvonne Pearson using the same method, hammering, then stabbing multiple times. Yvonne's body was buried under a pile of rubbish, showing Sutcliffe's cold-blooded and calculating nature. Many other women were murdered or attacked but survived, all of which showed a brutally repetitive pattern. Hammers and knives, focused on the head and abdomen, both destructive and reflective of Sutcliffe's obsessive hatred of women. By the late 1970s, the name Yorkshire Ripper had become a national obsession, with millions of women changing their lifestyles and the police being criticized for failing to stop the escalating murders. Peter Sutcliffe followed a familiar pattern. He hunted at night, choosing deserted streets or areas with few people. His casual appearance as a truck driver gave him a sense of security, leaving many women unsuspecting. Sutcliffe would often use a surprise hammer blow to incapacitate his victims. He would then follow up with a knife or screwdriver, targeting vital areas of the body. Many of the bodies were found in a state of severe disfigurement, suggesting that his goal was not only to kill, but also to humiliate and demonstrate his hatred for women. The repetitive nature of his attacks led police to believe that Sutcliffe was a serial killer with a deep sexual obsession and hatred for women. The brutality of his attacks led experts to believe that Sutcliffe was not just a common criminal, but a dangerous psychopath. It was this ruthlessness that cemented the name Yorkshire Ripper in the public mind. As the string of murders continued, the media dubbed Peter Sutcliffe the Yorkshire Ripper, a direct comparison to 19th century Jack the Ripper. The name quickly became a symbol of terror, appearing on the front pages of most major newspapers across the UK. People in Leeds, Bradford, Manchester, and surrounding areas are in a constant state of fear. At night, the streets are unusually quiet. Women are afraid to go out alone, Many have to change their working hours or rely on relatives to escort them when they go out. Many families impose strict rules to protect their daughters, making the whole community a suffocating and unsafe place. Meanwhile, the police's response has fueled further outrage. Instead of doing more to protect women, police have repeatedly urged them to stay home at night and avoid going out alone. This approach has been seen as blaming the victims, fueling public anger. Feminist groups organized Reclaim the Night, public marches at night, with the aim of reclaiming freedom of movement and demanding that the police play their role in protecting women. Candles, banners, and slogans on the streets became a powerful protest against both the killer and the incompetence of the security system. The Yorkshire Ripper not only killed women in brutality, but also left a psychological scar on society as a whole. For years, people in the north of England lived with the fear that any woman, mother, sister, daughter, could be next. The Yorkshire Ripper case sparked one of the largest investigations in British history. West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester Police employed thousands of officers, conducted more than 250,000 interviews, reviewed millions of records, and spent an estimated £11 million. Yet the investigation dragged on and stalled for years. Police focused almost exclusively on prostitutes, assuming that the killers were targeting only this group. This led them to miss important connections when some victims, like Jane MacDonald, had no connection to prostitution. Forensic clues, such as tire tracks or blood samples, were not fully exploited. Police had many opportunities to narrow down the list of suspects, but missed them. A disastrous turn of events came when police received a handwritten note and a recording from a man claiming to be the killer with a Wearside accent, Sunderland. In the recording, he taunted the police and claimed to be the Yorkshire Ripper. The media hailed the golden lead, and the police focused all their attention on the theory that the killer came from the northeast. As a result, over the years, investigators eliminated thousands of potential suspects, including Peter Sutcliffe himself, simply because their voices did not match the recordings. It was later discovered that Wearside Jack was actually a con artist who had inadvertently helped Sutcliffe continue his crimes in the shadows. The investigation dragged on for more than half a decade, while the number of victims continued to rise. The police faced a wave of criticism from the public and the press, who accused them of being incompetent, biased, and easily manipulated. The night of the 2nd of January 1981 marked a turning point. Peter Sutcliffe was driving with a woman when he was stopped by two Sheffield police patrolmen for having fake number plates. Initially, it was just a routine traffic stop, unrelated to the investigation. However, when he was taken to the station for questioning, the police decided to conduct a thorough search of the car. As a result, they discovered a series of unusual items: a hammer, knife, and screwdriver, tools that suspiciously matched the descriptions in previous murder cases. In addition, Sutcliffe deliberately hid another knife in the toilet at the police station, an act that made investigators even more wary. Sutcliffe was immediately detained for further questioning. At first, he tried to deny it, but after several days of being pressured by investigators with circumstantial evidence and contradictions in his testimony, Sutcliffe's mentality began to waver. Finally, he confessed to the entire series of murders that had haunted Britain for the past 6 years. In his confession, Sutcliffe described in detail how he had committed the crime, the time, the place, and even his state of mind. The details he gave matched the police's case file, from the use of the hammer and knife to the way the body was disposed of. This brought an end to the nearly decade-long hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper. The police, though criticized for a series of previous failures, had finally caught the man who had terrorized the north of England. In May 1981, Peter Sutcliffe was brought to trial at the Old Bailey, London, the site of many of Britain's most historic trials. The atmosphere in court was particularly tense. The press closely followed, the public was outraged and demanded justice for the victims, while the families of the unfortunate quietly waited for the verdict on the man who had robbed them of their loved ones. At trial, Sutcliffe admitted to 13 murders and 7 other assaults. His confession not only confirmed all the suspicions of the police, but also recreated the brutality that had terrified the whole of Britain for years. The defense argued that Sutcliffe suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and that he believed he had been sent by God to exterminate prostitutes in order to purify society. Psychiatrists called by the defense also testified that he showed signs of psychosis. If this argument is accepted, Sutcliffe could be sent to a mental hospital instead of prison. However, the prosecutor strongly objected, emphasizing that Sutcliffe's actions showed cold, deliberate calculation, not the act of insanity. After many days of deliberation, the jury rejected the insanity argument and agreed with the prosecution's view. Sutcliffe was fully criminally responsible for what he had done. As a result, Peter Sutcliffe was sentenced to life in prison with a recommendation of never being released, a sentence that clearly shows the toughness of the legal system against a serial killer and also brings some comfort to the victims' families after years of waiting for justice. After being sentenced to life in prison, Peter Sutcliffe was held in high-security prisons but spent most of his time in Broadmoor Mental Hospital. He lived for many years under close supervision, isolated from society, but always a target of hatred. During his sentence, Sutcliffe was repeatedly attacked, once blinded in one eye, a testament to the level of loathing he was held by both society and his fellow prisoners. In November 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Peter Sutcliffe died in prison at the age of 74, closing a dark chapter in British crime. His death did not erase the pain of his victims' families, but it put an end to the man who terrorized a generation. The Yorkshire Ripper remains a nightmare icon, leaving behind valuable lessons about investigative mistakes, prejudice against women, and the need to protect equality in society. The Yorkshire Ripper not only claimed the lives of 13 women and injured many others, but also left a deep psychological scar on British society. It exposed major flaws in the investigation, prejudice against women, especially prostitutes, and reliance on false information, which took years to catch the killer. After that, the British police carried out drastic reforms, upgrading data management, increasing interagency coordination, and strengthening forensic examination, creating a more solid foundation to deal with mass crime. More importantly, the case became a catalyst for the Reclaim the Night movement, paving the way for the fight for women's safety. The right to travel and protection for women as citizens still resonates today when gender-based violence remains a global problem. The Yorkshire Ripper ended with the death of Peter Sutcliffe in 2020, but his ghost remains a warning about the cost of error and prejudice, and a reminder of society's responsibility to protect fairness and safety, a message that has never lost its value. What do you think about this case? And what haunts you the most about the Yorkshire Ripper case? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like to support, subscribe to follow more famous cases. Thank you for watching until the end.